And we had actually not met in the flesh before.
We had not.
And both of our first impression was,
I thought you'd be taller.
thought you'd be taller. I seriously thought you were 5'6". I just naturally assume that everyone's taller than me because I'm like a hobbit. Hey, Tonya, we're recording again. You're back. We really wanted to record a thing for everyone following the Biz Bestie series because you and I recently met in person, and we both feel it's very important that at some point you need to meet your people in person.
Yes.
When we're on Zoom box, is just not the same. Um, but we have a lot of thoughts.
Mm-hmm.
We have a lot of thoughts. So I'm just going to tee it up and do a quick recap because I don't assume that everybody hopping into this video watched the last one.
Thank
Um,
you for not making that assumption. That's so irritating when I watch a video and it's like, obviously, there's like 5 episodes of backstory here that I'm not privy to, and I don't yet know you or like you enough to watch 5 other shows. So
no. So hopefully people will appreciate are crazy. So you and I have known each other in the online space as peers for
since 2019.
2019. I can't do the math. They're odd numbers. We're in an odd number year, and that's an odd number, and now I'm paralyzed. However many years that is. That's four. Four. Okay. And that entire time we have spent oodles, I mean, hundreds
Hours,
of
hundreds
hours,
of hours,
hundreds of hours.
maybe
I want to say
thousands of
it might
hours.
be thousands. We might have hit the 1,000 mark. I think we might have at some point.
Yeah.
We have posted inside the back end of other people's spaces. We have
Mm-hmm.
co-emceed sales events together, online conferences together. I mean, we've been up at 3. We're both on the West Coast, so we've been up at 3 in the morning, hair and makeup ready. All these things on the West Coast. We have hundreds of students at the same time, run customer service behind the scenes, and all the time we've been growing our businesses and um, helping each other.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't remember when it started, but then we got onto WhatsApp and just started trading messages. And in the last almost yearish,
Mm-hmm.
I would say those messages. Well, it's been about a year, I think.
Yeah.
It just naturally like we just started trading more and more, mostly voice messages back and forth to each other. We call them like I get a Tonya podcast and you get a Mary podcast, and we just started like talking through a lot of the things we're doing. But as a result of all this, we've also become really, really strong collaborators, which is where the
Mm-hmm.
series grew from. Because we had Danny Berman on here about a month ago when he was doing his launch, and you and I both noticed because we were sharing his launch with our audiences too, and we were like, don't think people maybe have actually seen had the curtain lifted on a
Mm-hmm.
real collaboration relationship that is really, really strong, and maybe we can just show them, and that would be kind of cool. So
Right.
so today we're going to talk about something that happened 2 weeks ago. We finally met in person because I'm birthing this podcast project and you're one of my guests, and I decided I was going to record everybody in person. And so
Yes.
you live just outside LA, and you came and met me in the city while I was there. And we had actually not met in the flesh before.
We had not.
And both of our first impression was,
I thought you'd be taller.
thought you'd be taller. I seriously thought you were 5'6". I just naturally assume that everyone's taller than me because I'm like a hobbit.
Well, and I assume the same, right? It's like I'm 5'3", so I assume everybody is like 5'5", 5'6". It's pretty average, I think, woman height.
I think so.
And yeah, so yeah, that was the first thing. And then I felt like it was an episode of that 80s movie Roadhouse where everybody goes Patrick Swayze's character and says, "Huh, thought you'd be bigger." He's like, "Yeah, I get that a lot."
Yeah, I really thought you would be taller too. Isn't that funny?
Well, and what's funny is like I remember like thinking that, thinking like that is the most cliche first impression knee
Mhm.
jerk response, and then I still couldn't help myself from saying it out loud.
It was the first thing that popped out of your mouth.
It was. I was like, I just have to say it. I thought you'd be taller. And you were like, yeah, I thought you'd be taller too.
I just walk through the world because I'm 5'2" on a really good day.
Mm-hmm.
Like years ago, my doctor was like, "You can just tell people you're 5'2". I was like, "I'm 5'1 3/4". Like, just tell people you're 5'2". So, like, on a really good day, in really good shoes, I'm 5'2".
Yeah.
And I'm just so used to everybody being bigger than me. And there was something very refreshing about realizing that we are of the same planet.
We are both travel sized.
Definitely. It was funny too, because like the day after we recorded, I had breakfast with you and your family before
Mm-hmm.
everybody departed, and we were just continuing to debrief, and your husband was sitting across the table from us chuckling because we were both like, "Oh my God," and I was having this insecurity and that insecurity, and I was like, and I don't know why this is always the last bullet item on the list, but I was like, and I feel really fat.
Yeah.
Like, what is that? And, and
Right.
I was citing Elizabeth Gilbert's book, Big Magic, because she's like, when people are afraid to start creative things, she's like, and I don't know why this always ends up on the list, but I feel that.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if that's just like a byproduct of being in the female expression, especially in an American culture. I don't know. I don't know if it's our generation, but like, and
I
we were
don't think it's our
talking before we,
generation
yeah, yeah,
because
go
I
ahead.
mean, I don't think it's our generation because I think our mothers went through it too.
Yeah.
Right. I do think it is, US female expression kind of goes into it. But I also think, like, I mean, I think part of it is, right, we know each other from here up. And, right, like, and I mean, we've seen each other in tank tops. We've seen each other in fancy dresses. We've seen each other hair done, hair not done. You have seen me fresh out of bed. And I mean, like everything in between. But there's still something to be said for, Zoom filters and all of this weirdness. And I don't know where it comes from because like I'm not a person that's ever like, I feel fat, I feel tubby. Like that's not who I am. But I was like packing my bags and I was so frustrated. I'm like trying things on left and right. Like I'm trying on my recording outfit, right? Because everybody who's going to watch that podcast genuinely cares what the girl from episode 4 is wearing.
You left
Like,
me a voice note about that. And I was like, I'm
yeah,
so glad you finally found your outfit.
I'm just not that person. Like, I'm the person because I work from home. I'll wear the exact same thing every single day. Like, I don't care. And so, so Brian doesn't know what to do with me because he's just like, you never care about what you wear, but okay, I guess this is where we're at. And then I'm just like, I feel frumpy, and I have felt frumpy since 2019. And, and he's just like, and then I turn it in, you never tell me I'm beautiful. He's like, whoa, I'm gonna leave and then I'm gonna come back.
Like, I need to send Brian like a consolation. Oh,
Like
that
an
is good.
emotional support person throughout this. But, to bring this back to like the business bestie aspect and the meeting in real life, I don't think we are the only people who have this inner dialogue with ourselves. I just think that we are among the few who are willing to talk about it. And I wonder how many people never meet in real life, like never meet anybody from their online space in real life because they let that inner dialogue control them.
Oh, mic drop moment. Damn, Tonya. I didn't even put those words.
So that's why I think we have to talk about this, not because we're being like ridiculous, like women, right? It's just,
That is so
I
it,
know.
because I walked into this and I was like, you know me, I've been channeling this thing through my woo woo side of sensible woo. And I'm like, peopling is becoming a thing. Like, we need to get face to face with people again. And like, sometimes being online, totally fine. It makes sense. That's the circumstance. Done. Wrap it up with a pretty bow. And then there are many times, and it's growing, where it's like we need to find a way to get together when the circumstances allow for it instead of resisting it. And, but what you just said just now, that is so it. It's like, okay, I've got a question for you then.
Yeah.
So the reason that finally got us together was Mary decided to birth high craftsmanship project for their podcast. And Tonya said, yes, doing it.
Yes.
And because the parameters involved being in a studio together, and you were able to come down to LA, which I
Mm-hmm.
thank you to the end of the moon, because I could have flown to Sacramento, but like you were like, I'll come meet you down in LA. And I was like, oh,
Yeah.
thank God. Because then I could batch a bunch of recordings. And if that opportunity hadn't been there, do you think we would have gotten together regardless? I mean, I think eventually we would have because we've been talking about it, but
Yeah.
like,
I mean, well, it helps that you live near Brian's favorite city, right? So Brian's always like,
yeah,
anytime you want to go visit Mary, I am like up on it. But, like anything, I feel like the day to day, right? The urgent always intercedes for the important. And so I think that it would have been really hard without an event because you made an event
yeah,
like with this in-person recording studio. These are the dates, right? So there, all the decisions really were off the table. It's either I'm available on those dates or I'm not.
yeah,
I'm either willing to drive to LA or I'm not. But this, like, oh, we should totally get together. I mean, how often do we say that? Oh, we should totally get together. But without a date, a time, and a location,
and a reason.
like what gets you there? Nothing, right? Because
Yeah.
I could, theoretically, I could take my family to go visit you anytime in Washington.
Mhm.
But because I can do it anytime, it never seems like it makes sense to make it a priority.
Yeah.
Right. And there's absolutely no reason why you would ever want to come to my corner of California because like nobody comes here on purpose, which is totally fine. We're very used to like traveling to other people because there is no attraction here aside from Yosemite National Park, which is a beautiful
Right.
thing.
Yeah.
But you can't live your whole life in Yosemite National Park, and the coffee's not that great, honestly. So
Oh,
yeah, it was much better for us to meet in LA. So I think that, I want to believe that, yes, we would have met each other somewhere, but knowing me, we would have met at a conference. Like we would have gone to Podcast Movement together. We would have gone to Craft and Commerce
yeah.
together.
Hmm.
That would have been a more likely scenario for us to get together
Yeah.
because it would have had to be tied to work, right? We would have had to have a business case for it. And being able to go down to LA and then bring my family, like I would never take my family if I was going to a conference because my brain doesn't divide like that.
Right. Right. It was very special. I've been
It
watching
was
your girls
fun.
grow up online and like it was so good to see them in person. And it was and you I love that you talk about like as business people, we usually like need an excuse for a business use case in order to like
Mm-hmm.
justify something. I think this is why I have been championing my people who orbit in my world. And I'm like, sign up for a conference, pick one
Mm-hmm.
this year. And I know that not everybody is great at conferencing. You're good at conferencing. I'm good at, I mean, we just like, I don't know why. I don't know why we like it. I don't know why we're good at it, but we just are. And I think that for most people, it's intimidating to go do things in
Mm-hmm.
general. And when you have a biz buddy, you can really strengthen that bond, first of all, by agreeing to meet up together. You can also split the cost by agreeing to share space if
Yeah.
that's something you're comfortable doing.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and and I think that, it can really make this whole journey just so much better, just so much easier.
Mm-hmm.
So why don't more people do it?
Yeah, again, right? Like back to the I feel fat. I think I don't think everybody is as transparent with each other as you and me are, right? I do think a lot of people send a representative to the conversations.
I love that you use that term about sending a representative because yeah,
Yeah, well, because it's like, my background's in public relations. I mean, I've been the representative for organizations and for brands, and
yeah,
I showcase the best. I'm the person who's like the emissary for the highly introverted, very sweet, very smart executive or faculty member. I say the things that they just can't say on the spot.
Right.
But, there have been times, and I remember back then where, I'm supposed to be coaching somebody for a media interview. And it's like, I can set up everything. Like, this person is brilliant. This person has these accolades. This is why they're the best speaker. But when it comes to interview time, it's them, the microphone, and the interviewer. And like, it's the whole lead the horse to water, can't make them drink.
Yeah.
Right? Like, at some point, they just need to like show up. And some can do that really well and some can't. And I think in the online relationships and online businesses, so often you project this portion of yourself. And I think you've
Yes.
seen that too in communities, right? Like, this is a community where I have to be all business all the time. This is a community where it's okay for people to know I'm a mom, or, I love my cat or whatever. Right. And this is a community where like my personal life has to be perfect in order to
Yeah.
fit in. I think you and me have gone to a point, and I think part of this came from the thousands of hours we have worked together. We're just too old and too tired to segment ourselves like that.
It just
Like, you can
can't.
all of us or none of us.
I mean, there comes a point, I think it was all those, it was a volume of hours. There came a point where it's like, I am so exhausted right now. My hair hasn't been washed. There's no makeup on. I'm still wearing my pajamas, or I got into them early and I'm going to skip the shower tonight. And like, we still have to get some things done.
Mm-hmm.
And like, you're just going to see me as I am because like this thing's going to get done. And I think that's a unique experience that you and I've had. Um, and I would hope that like I know we have some people who are following the series where we're recording these conversations, and I'm just hoping that they realize you don't have to go through such extreme things in order to
Mm-hmm.
find that transparency with your people. But there is a big vulnerability moment. Ours showed up initially through exhaustion, where it's like I literally
Yeah.
cannot put on any more filters of any kind or any, personas or whatever. It's and you see people like that, and then you're like, oh, they didn't run away screaming because I wasn't wearing makeup today. Fine.
Right. Well, and also that level of exhaustion, we have both reached a point of compassion fatigue as well.
Yeah.
And we were able to be honest with each other. And so for people who don't know, like, compassion fatigue, it's exactly what it sounds like. It's like when you are a coach, a consultant, you perform a customer service role, you are a community manager, right? You are front facing with the audience or the community, 24/7 nonstop. And you have, like, everything is great. It's like working at Disney, right? Like, everything is great. I'll find that out for you. Da, da, da. And you get to a point, because you're one person, there's hundreds, if not thousands in the community, and you start to hear the same stories over and over again, right? And you're like, okay, how many people's grandmas can die like the day before the event so that they need a full refund? How many people are going to lash out at me because they don't like the sizing of the free t-shirt we sent them? Right. And the thing is like, you can't take that out on the community. That's not professional or anything, but we were able to work behind the scenes. You held space for me in times where I had to be like, look, Mary, I know I have to get on there and be like all cheery, but I am sitting on 22 emails of people like calling me every name in the book over something I had no control over. And some of those people are on that call. And I'm having a really hard time with that. Right. And you would be like, yeah, I would have a hard time with that too. And yet you're going to get out there and you're going to go do the thing, because that is what we are here for.
Yeah. There were a couple times where I was like, go get on the mic.
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna go answer that poopy person.
Yeah.
I'm gonna write it for you. I'll save it as a draft, and you can decide later if you want to send it. Because I have a way of sending things that are just like, kindly piss off.
Yeah. Right. But I think all of that just led to the fact that we knew each other on like a deep level. Like, and I'll say this for the moms out there. I know that a lot of women don't take their families with them on anything related to work because they fear how people will view them professionally based on how they parent.
Mm,
Right. It's like, what kind of parent I am, because I've been in the middle of a voice note and have had to parent my children.
mhm.
And
Yeah.
like, there is no part of who I am that you weren't already aware of before we met in person.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, we both saw each other at pretty like lower ugly moments where we're just like, I don't have any more patience. I'm done.
Hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, but I do think that you're right though, that a lot of people are missing out on more support, peer support specifically in their lives because they're so afraid of how they're going to be perceived by other people.
Hmm.
And it goes unvocalized. So hopefully us talking put some vocalized
Hmm.
words out there for somebody to go
Yeah.
like, oh my gosh, that's me, you know. And that I'm pretty sure 9 times out of 10, 9.5, 9.9 times out of 10, they're not going to react to the way like limiting beliefs in your head
Hmm.
will think that they'll react. And the 0.1 time that they do, it's like those are definitely not my people.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And I think part of it is also coming to a confidence that then they're not your people. And I mean, let's think about like us meeting. Like, what was the real risk of us meeting? Because I think that's something else that people conflate. Like they make it bigger than
Yeah.
it really is. Is okay. So if we meet in person and we don't hit it off, like what does that mean for the relationship? What does that do? I mean, you would go back to Washington, I would come back to my place in California, and we would move on with our lives, right? It's like there was no harm in us meeting. And I
Yeah.
think sometimes people fear, like, if they know the real me, or if they see this, or if they see that.
Yes. I think two people extrapolate too far into the future. Like,
Mm-hmm.
well, then how am I going to handle this hypothetical situation or that hypothetical situation? And it's
Yeah.
like, well, you can't solve for it now. So
Mm-hmm.
why do that? You know?
Yeah, exactly.
Um, I think it's a real sign. I'm wondering, like, you and I can talk about signs of like evidence that those internal worries are total bunk.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think through actions we show each other like how much we do care. Like I know that I was, running around having wall to wall meetings while I was there because I was trying to like reconnect with my network from my LA days down there. And I had like these little windows of time, and I purposely passed by the studio space the day before because I was like, parking is a real bear in LA. Like it's a for
Mm-hmm.
real thing. And the last thing you want to be worried about is like, where am I going to park my car when I'm trying to get to an interview? And and so I was driving around and I was just sending you like lists of addresses in the street where I was like, and you can park here and here and here and here. And I was like, it was just the best way I could like show you my love ahead of time to like make it a little
Yeah.
easier for you. And the other people who were showing up live in the city. So like for them, I wasn't so worried. I'm like, you guys are used to this, you got it.
Mm-hmm.
But you guys had made an effort to come down. And um I'm just wondering like what would be some of your other signs when you know that there's evidence that like it's going to be okay. Like the trash can run around in my head, but like this is going to be okay.
I think that, part of it is just, I don't know if there's signs so much as like you wouldn't have gotten this far, right? If
Yeah.
you weren't supposed to get together,
Yeah.
right? Like, I mean, let's just say you hated little people and you pretended to like them, like the whole time that we've been friends. When I said, well, I could come down on this date, maybe by myself, but I could bring my family on this date, you would have said, well, I think coming by yourself would be better, right?
Mhm.
Instead you were like, no, I want to meet the whole family. If they want to meet me, I want to meet them, right? But I mean, like the fact that like that to me was the sign. I was like, yeah, actually, like Mary would like all of us to be there. And Brian was like, I've been wanting to meet Mary, because he's been sitting by all of our Tonya Mary podcasts for 4 years himself. So he has his own like relationship by proxy with you.
Yeah.
And but like he was on board too. I think that's a sign. If there are people around you who you have actually talked to about your Biz Bestie, this
Yeah.
online friend of yours, right? Like if you are connecting enough to where you've told other people in your real life about them, I think that is a sign that meeting face to face makes sense. That is a sign that this is a genuine relationship.
Yeah. I agree too. Um, Everyone knows about Tonya.
Everybody knows about me.
Everybody knows about Tonya. So, it wasn't weird to be like, it was mostly like, oh my gosh, you're gonna meet in person. How cool, you know? Yeah. I think if you feel like you have to, I mean, but that's true of anything in life. If you feel like you have to hide something
Mm-hmm.
or that you can't just be like, this is where I go,
Yeah.
this is what I do, something's something's off. Either
Mm-hmm.
you don't exactly feel right about that, or you are masking real heavily over here in a silo and then over here in a silo in your life. And like you're not integrating those parts, which is if we're talking about biz besties, is gonna hurt, it's gonna harm the biz bestie relationship.
Mm-hmm.
Like you can have biz besties or biz buddies, whatever you want to call them, and still talk about businessy things, but it's not, I don't think it's gonna go as deep as like the way you and I've grown over the years.
Yeah. Well, and I think there's actually a difference between a biz buddy and a biz bestie.
Oh, please define.
Because like I have biz buddies, right? And so
Yeah,
these are people who, you know, like maybe there's a segment of business in which we intersect and we like each other. So for instance, I am part of a community of writers and speakers.
yeah,
And I love those folks. But when it comes to observing trends in the marketplace, I cannot have conversations with those individuals. They're just, they either think about things differently than I do. They maybe they align themselves with like a different way of operating and making decisions than I do.
yeah,
Or maybe quite honestly, I mean, I'm thinking of a couple, they just don't think that far ahead. You know, they're in the moment sort of thinkers. And when it comes to talking about writing or talking about speaking, and hey, there's, you know, these 5 speaker conferences are finally back post pandemic. Which ones are you guys going to? Right? Like I'm going to go to them to
yeah,
think of like which conferences should I go to and why.
yeah.
But when it comes to there is something wonky going on, Mary. Like I am seeing, you know, longstanding memberships close. I am seeing,
Mm.
I'm seeing some people who have always had 6 figure launches not have 6 figure launches. I'm curious if you're seeing the same thing, right? Like inside baseball kind of conversation. That's biz bestie
It
stuff.
is. It's inside baseball.
That's the biz best. And I think that's the difference. The fact that I can talk to you about anything and I don't have to couch or qualify is what
No.
elevates you from a biz buddy to a biz bestie.
And you don't have to frame it like you've gotten on, left me a Tanya podcast on WhatsApp, and you're just, and we've been talking about, say, we've been talking about trends in the
Mm-hmm.
marketplace, and all of a sudden you're like, just out of nowhere, and you're like, I'm having a personal thing, like this is what's going on, blah, blah, blah. And you don't have to frame it. And I'm just like, great, thanks.
Yeah.
I think if you have to frame something up, there something's not quite right. Either you're not comfortable, like the walls are still up a little bit, or the relationship just hasn't matured yet enough into that like true biz bestie space. But um I'm wondering if like you can recall, right now I'm having a hard time recalling, like at what point do you think it like really changed where we didn't have to sort of frame things up for each other? Like,
Yeah. Well, I know exactly when it changed actually.
do you? Okay, tell me, because I don't.
Because I came to the table, and we talked about this when we met in person. I came to the table with some insecurity that you never knew that I had. So we were talking about, and this was in the podcast recording, right? We talked about weight class.
Yeah,
And I never viewed myself in the same weight class as you.
which I thought was like, what? That was ridiculous.
Right, because in the way that we actually like met the first time, like I had kind of a behind the scenes of your financial situation.
Yeah,
And like so I like knew some about you that you didn't know about me,
yeah,
right? And things,
yeah.
and so that could color like a perception. But I just viewed you as having it so much more together than I did. You know, I felt like you had a strong brand. You had, because when I met you, you were rebranding over to the Sensible Woo side and you were redoing your website, you were redoing a lot of things. But I was like, you know, she's got a strong brand. She knows who she's for. She knows who she's not for. And it was like, I had some thoughts of who I was for and who I was not for, but I had not yet come to a place where I was ready to speak those out loud. And then it was actually like spring of 2022 when we were having some conversations. We were having financial conversations. I was like
Yeah.
stretching financially in my business because I was going to take an extended medical leave. And
Hmm.
it was like, okay, do I close up shop for 3 months or do I hire somebody to be me for 3 months?
Hmm.
And if I hire somebody to be me for 3 months, I get this momentum, but like
Hmm.
I'm not seeing any of those dollars because all those dollars have to go to pay a person who's qualified to be me for this short
Hmm.
period of time. Or I can close up shop for 3 months. No new money will come in, but no money will go out either.
Yeah.
Right. And so we had this cover, and you were like, you know what, Tanya, you are so wise to be thinking through this. And I think you are right to hire somebody to be you for this period of time. And, it doesn't sound to me like you're buying to belong or doing anything like ego driven. It's just you understand if you want a business to come back to, like if
Yeah.
you want to be able to pick up where you left off, this is what's required. If you shutter everything, which you totally can, it's going to take 6 months to ramp up when you come back. And so it's just, it's a matter of these things. And you were like, yeah. And you just kept telling me how wise I was. And I was like, she thinks I'm wise.
Ah,
And then, we started. And so that I think kind of broke some ice in our conversations back and forth.
yeah.
And, and there was a conversation where I was like, here's my burn rate. Like, here's my overhead. Here's
Yeah.
what I'm bringing in. Here's where I'm spending it. Like, it's not sustainable, but I think this can get me to like from here to after I come back from medical leave and then I can work it out.
Hmm.
And you were like, because you see under the hood of a lot of businesses, you're like, you're actually in a lot better shape than a lot of businesses in terms of profit margin, right?
Hmm.
Because there's a lot of businesses that bring in $1 million, but it costs them $975,000 to bring in their 1 million, right? And so you're like, profit margin wise, actually, you're sitting pretty, Tanya. So this makes sense. And I actually think you have more runway than you think you do. And so we started having these deeper conversations, but it took me recognizing, like being willing to step into the fact that we were on a more equal playing field than I thought we were.
Yeah.
And like that allowed me to let my guard down.
Yeah. It was when you went on your extended medical leave.
Mm-hmm.
Then we like traded after that we started trading hardcore numbers.
Yeah,
And I think did you already know about some of the stuff for me in the past with like the debt load and the
I did because you've always been open about talking about that sort of
yeah.
thing in the coaching spaces that we've been in, right? So it's like
Yeah.
I knew your history. And I
Then you
and
got like
again,
the ugly, but then you got the ugly version story. You got the whole thing.
well, but also it was like, wow, here's somebody who, I mean, like we all love a rags to riches story,
Yeah.
right? And we all think somebody else's rags to riches story is way better than our own. Like that's just it, right? Because I mean, and you even talked about this on these videos. You're like, well, you have your own story. I'm like,
Yeah.
yeah, but I just like your story so much better than I like mine. Right? Like yours is like awesome. And also, we've talked a lot about the kids versus no kids thing. I have business buddies who have children who you would think I would align with a little more closely, who I do not align with more closely because how we view our families in the overall picture of our businesses are very different. Right? Like I know people who like to blame the fact that they have kids on not reaching certain goals. Where I am the person who is just like, look, like my brain doesn't segment that way. So I'm either 100% mom mode, I'm 100% work mode. I am not the person who can be in mom mode and then just put the kids playing by themselves for an hour, go do a coaching call, show up, fully like deliver on that coaching call, and then bounce back out and go play Barbies. Like I have to block the time and I need transition time.
Yeah.
And I'm okay with that, right? Like I don't feel badly about the fact that I have that need. And I think some people do.
Yeah. Yeah. I I have always appreciated the mom role that you have. And I've always appreciated the way you have always respected the mom role I had for a while in my life with a previous
Mm-hmm.
partner. And and I remember during the height of COVID when we were both coaching and running community for another place, you were like, you were homeschooling, you were working. I mean, it is a lot going on. And I remember we had, maybe this was like an early point when we first started bonding. Because I remember I told you a bit about what had gone on in that previous situation where, the partner I had met was sober when we met and very not sober when we split.
Yeah.
And she had a child and she was gone out of the house a lot towards the end because she was
Mm-hmm.
finding what she wanted. And I was building my business and it felt a lot like COVID before COVID.
Right.
We had one car, my car, and it was always gone.
Mm.
So we couldn't go anywhere. We were locked in the house. And I would have to be, building a pilot program and doing these things with a child who was, having a lot of anxious attachment issues. Can't blame them. And I had to figure out, how do I give him the attention he needs while also doing business. And when COVID happened, I was just like, I've got a few tricks up my sleeve. Like, I have
Right.
some ideas for you. Like they might not work, but like this works for me and I can take it. And
Yeah.
I was amazed at how many other moms during COVID dismissed me when I was like, I get it. I didn't push a baby out of my vagina. I get it. I'm not currently a mom, but I have actually done this situation and I can help you. And you always were like, oh my God, thank you. And I can't tell you how many other moms are just like, well, I've literally heard, well, you're not a mom.
Oh, okay. That has to be a whole other
There has to be a
episode.
whole other video.
How we are biz besties. I'm a mom and you are a cat mom. So I'm a human mom and a cat mom. Lily is really more of the cat's mom than I am, but hey, fine, whatever.
I
You've got Mr. Giles. But no, that is a whole thing because I have such strong opinions
know.
of that tension.
Yeah.
And like, I do believe that there is a bigger system at play that benefits when we pit women against each other. And I'm
Yes.
just going to drop that there. And I'm
Okay,
going to
we'll
say
park
we
that for
can
the
have
next
a
one.
separate episode about those systems and how we see that playing out in all different arenas, but all especially in business. And the
So
mom versus no mom thing is a big one.
it's a big one. So parking that conversation later, I will say that in this discussion we're having today about like the meeting in person and where the strong bond comes from, I think that's a really big part of it is you and I bypass that system that would normally pit us against each other. And we did it naturally. It wasn't forced.
Mm-hmm. I
Um,
think we are both people, though, who see the intrinsic worth of other humans. And I know that you don't know how to move about the world any differently, Mary.
yeah,
I actually do know how to move about the world differently. Like I was
yeah,
trained to not see the intrinsic worth of other people in my prior careers. So I know that not everybody has that natural gift, but you, because you see the intrinsic worth of every individual, you don't dismiss people. You don't dismiss, like, oh, they're just a this. Oh, they're just that. Like, I was having a conversation in a business group about personality types, and this one person was just railing against personality tests. They're like, because all they do, the only thing that they do is pigeonhole people, and then people can never get out of that definition. Oh, they're the just a this. They're always going to blow deadlines, so that's just who they are, and da da da. And I'm like, well, that's only true for people who don't get how those assessments work. But what I was thinking about last night, kind of rehashing that conversation, because I'm like, okay, you know me, right? It's like, am I going to add anything by countering, or should I just let this conversation die out? But when I recognize, it's like, yeah, when you're trying to dehumanize people so that you can excuse behavior, whether it's your own behavior or their
yeah,
behavior, right? Yeah, you'll totally use a personality type assessment, an archetype of some sort to dismiss people, to pigeonhole
mhm,
them. Because then that's a form of dehumanization. I think for us, because we both see the intrinsic worth of other individuals, we give people the benefit of the doubt,
yeah,
right? It's like we're not toxic positivity types who go into that like assume positive intent. We assume positive intent until somebody tells us otherwise or somebody
yeah,
demonstrates otherwise. And we give them
yeah.
the space to do that. We give them the space to show us who they really are.
Yes, and believe them.
And we believe them.
And
And
believe
that's
them.
another area where I would say I got to see the real you is, we were both working with individuals who we'd come to see the real them. And you were the person who was like, you know what? It's just not worth it. It is just not worth the, like, what I'm having to give up of myself to make this business relationship work is not worth the price tag.
Yeah.
And, your follow up thought I remember was like, now I know I could raise the price tag. I can totally raise the price tag. But what I'm recognizing is there is no price high enough to offset the values that I feel like I'm sacrificing.
Yeah. There's a cost to everything,
Mm-hmm.
including your paycheck.
Including your paycheck. And so
Yeah.
I know that you wanted to leave folks with some practical tips in terms of meeting your business bestie in real life.
Yeah. I was just sort of ruminating, and it's a very unfinished thought, but on this peer-to-peer coaching aspect, which is what we do,
Mm-hmm.
there, unless you live in the same town and you're able to get together in person and at work and it feels good, even in those situations, like we have technology, so why not use it?
Mm-hmm.
Um, you and I connect really well asynchronously as well as synchronously. But I
Right.
think, I don't, it's such a like unformed question here. Like, if somebody else was like, I think I really do have a biz bestie, and like if I was willing to, maybe lay bare a little bit more of myself, we would have like a deeper connection and can talk about some like truly like complicated things where you need to be just bluntly honest with each other about like numbers and money and whatever. And you don't need to hide that from the other person. Do you think that it's easier to connect first over something like Zoom, or do you think it's easier over how we do asynchronous voice notes on like WhatsApp? I have a Discord space. I've got people where I will chat with them asynchronously over Discord, like DMs. Um, I personally feel like email is not the best place. I don't think that for whatever reason it just doesn't work. I think we put on our writing persona and then that kind of like takes over. I also don't think I've got this one group that loves to have a group text, and I find that the there's no depth in it.
So I think a couple of things. So first of all, I do think some kind of technology that allows for on the fly conversations and brainstorming, because the reason, and the tool doesn't matter whether it's WhatsApp, it's Voxer, it's Discord, that's irrelevant. It's voice memos back and forth on Messenger. Like I have people we
Yeah,
have those conversations with. I don't think that's as important as the ability to say, hey, I'm capturing some thoughts in the moment and
yeah,
blah 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 blah, right? And then for the other person to hear that and either immediately respond or to say, I'm going to sit with that. Oh, that's good stuff to process. Here's my initial thoughts. I'm going to come back to it. Because that's the beauty. You don't get that on Zoom. Like who in the world rewatches Zoom recordings? None of us. Okay. I'm
nobody.
sure there's like 11% of the population that rewatches their Zoom recordings. I have a client, she tells me she watches every session we have, she watches at least 5 times. And I love that about her. But if you and I are having a coffee chat and we record it, I'm not going back to rewatch that. Okay. I'm going to tell myself
People
it's
re
there.
people record coffee chat.
Yes. Yes.
Blew my mind.
But when we have these conversations on WhatsApp or whatever, I can replay it. I can be like, oh yeah, Mary said that thing like last week. Let me replay that because I know I had some additional thoughts. And then I can respond to that as my thoughts emerge and develop. But I also think that there's less formality. Like you don't expect me to come to you with my 3 point summary of what you just said and your, next best action step
Yeah,
because you're talking about things as they're happening in the moment and I'm talking about them as they're happening in the moment. We know that it's fluid and it's ever changing. And I think when you put things in email, first of all, it feels super formal.
yeah,
Second, it feels like things have to be more polished than they are.
yeah,
And so I do like that asynchronous. I like tools that allow me to use voice and text and could be my age, it could be years of being a desk worker, but I need things where I can access from like I can use a full keyboard to type my thoughts as well as typing them on my phone. And that's why I don't like text threads, right? Because
Yeah.
you're not going to get depth from me if all I get to do is use my thumbs.
No, I'm same. I love that WhatsApp is on my desktop. I love that it's on my mobile. Um, I think it's a great place to start.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, we also drop links to each other. We'll listen to
Yep.
podcasts and drop the links to them in there, and then you can go back and review them later. Yeah, just ways to facilitate some of that for some of our people.
Yeah, I think so. And so I think that, one part of it is you've got to find some kind of channel that works well for both of you, right? And I'm on various channels. There was a time where you were my only WhatsApp connection.
Yeah.
And now I have other WhatsApp connections. So I think that that increases the frequency of our conversations a little bit because I get more messages on WhatsApp. Um, but because I have so few connections on WhatsApp still, um, you don't get drowned out.
Mm-mm.
So, like, if
Same.
I was to enter a business bestie relationship today with somebody, so I use Voxer for a lot of things. It's a similar app
Yeah.
to WhatsApp. I would not use Voxer though because my Voxer is flooded. I've got Voxer messages that came in when I was on vacation that I have yet to listen to. And honestly, I look at them and they just feel like work.
But they also disappear after a long period of time if you don't, like if I drop you links to something and you didn't grab them and it's just no, and then it cuts you off after 15 minutes and like WhatsApp, I think we can go indefinitely. We've left some pretty long ass messages
Oh,
before.
I left you a 30-minute message on Wednesday. Good
So
golly, I didn't
glorious.
even
I did
know.
listen to that twice.
Like an hour of the Tonya monologue right there for you. So I think that, that's one thing is you've got to find a system that works well for both of you. The relationship is going to be inhibited if you pick a platform that works for one and doesn't, and it's not the other person's preferred method. I think
Yeah.
that's a biggie.
Yeah. And I think too, like if you have to force it with somebody, maybe they're in your classification, maybe they're a biz buddy and not a
Yeah,
bestie, because if you can't dive in deeply into a vulnerable space and feel like you have a safe space to do that, then it's not going to form. It's not going to happen.
right. Well, and we all have our own measures of what makes us feel comfortable, like we can be real with somebody.
Yeah.
Like I have one client, like we were brainstorming back and forth on something. And I just verbally said, and Mary, like I don't generally cuss a lot professionally. I do have quite the potty mouth personally, but I also have small children, and I would like them not to talk like a sailor, and I need to not model that. But they said something, and I was so incredulous that somebody would say this to them, and I know you've been there. And and so at first I was like, well, just because they say it doesn't make it true, right? And then they were like, but da-da-da. I said, what? I've got two middle fingers for that. That's what I have right now. I have two middle fingers for that. And they just like stopped everything, right? And they looked at me and they were like, I liked you before, but I love you now. And they were like, because I was thinking that, but I didn't feel like it was appropriate to our relationship to say that. And now that you have said that to me, I feel like I can tell you what I really think because I was trying to be diplomatic and that wasn't working. I was like, well, you're trying so hard to be diplomatic, you're not being honest.
No,
Right.
and
But
you're
that
also,
elevated
yeah,
us in our relationship. Go ahead.
yeah. Well, it also is the thing people are seeking authenticity. Our friend Rachel Allen, she's at her lovely like diatribe on authenticity, and it's the thing that stops you from being authentic in all the other areas of your life. But I'm just going to finish it out with this. Um, I think you really know somebody's headed to biz bestie land or you're already there when one of you drops in a real short little note and is like, ah, on a voice note. Happy Sunday. So how are you today? How are you doing? What went well? What didn't go well? Go. You know,
Right.
and you or them, depending on who starts it, responds and is completely honest and doesn't
Mm-hmm.
go, oh, everything's fine. We're just fine. It's like had a really great week over here, or like this whole thing went to pot. I feel
Yeah.
like I am underwater right now. Thank you for asking. You know,
Hmm.
I think like we're just moving into an era where all of our entrepreneurs need to learn that like it is safe to just be like, yeah, this thing really sucks right now.
Yeah. Well, and also it's like, I don't know, the fake it till you make it thing. Like I say that, like when people are like, how, you're so comfortable on video. I said, oh, that's a fake it till you make it thing, right? Like you just act like you're
Yeah.
comfortable on video. And then one day you wake up and you are comfortable on video and you don't know how it happened.
Yeah.
So I'm not referring to that specific type of fake it till you make it, but this idea that I'm just going to act like everything is peaches and roses and like people are going to like me more. No, because you're always going to come to the table with the idea that they're not ready for the real you. And here's a thought that I will share that I'll kind of
Hmm.
leave it with. So, a good friend of mine's best friend lost her boyfriend, um, and she didn't like lose him under a rock. Like he died, and he just happened to die while she was on vacation. So there's a lot of grief there, right? And
Yeah.
so we have a mutual friend who's holding a ton of space for it, and she had a complete meltdown with me yesterday. And I was, and of course I'm like, well, come over, and I'm just like, you're
Yeah.
shouldering a lot, like sitting with somebody else in their grief is so much. And she says, well, the thing is like he was my friend too, but I don't feel like I can cry in front of her because she already feels like her grief is too big for our friendship. And so she was saying, she goes, we've had several conversations where I'm like, let it out. Like, you want to scream, you want to rant, you don't want to talk, like, that's all good. And she just keeps saying, I'm afraid if I actually express how I really feel, everybody is going to run away from me. Like, it's going to be way more than I have relationship equity for.
Hmm.
And so I feel like I have to hold it in. She goes, and then because I hold it in, it like comes out in weird ways.
Yeah.
And so this mutual friend was like, well, I don't want to feed that. And then I'm the person who's like, but you realize you're doing the same thing she's doing, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
You have decided she's not strong enough for your grief. And and we're not talking about like, oh, somebody's grieving, let's make it all about us. But
Mm.
she's afraid that your relationship isn't strong enough for her true grief. And now you're afraid that your relationship isn't strong enough for your true grief.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
maybe you both cry together. Like, I don't know that that's the right answer. I am not a grief therapist or counselor or anything, but it was just really interesting to me to see. I mean, how often are we better friends to other people than we are to ourselves?
So many times.
So I think part of that
Mm.
biz bestie relationship is being vulnerable, right? We had to be vulnerable to meet in person. We had to plan a lot. We had to I mean, granted, we were both going to places. We traveled a distance to meet each
Yes.
other in this other place, right? So there's a
Yeah.
lot of planning that went to that. And that's like an evaluation too of the relationship, I think, is like, are you worth this? You were totally worth it, by the way. You were worth that and so much more. I'd meet you in France next
Oh, yeah. Okay. We'll part. Yeah, I love it though. Yeah, I think the best thing is to like always offer, how are you? Do you need to
time. Mm-hmm.
talk? What's going on? I get routinely from plenty of other people, and everything's fantastic. And I know I'm like, oh, bullshit.
Mm-hmm.
And when I ask you that question, you are always like, well, some things are good, but like here's what's happening right
Yeah,
now. And I think it's the reason why there is a difference. And we've become really strong collaborators as a result too.
exactly. Because you know that if I say that, I'll tell you if it's not a good time to collaborate on something.
Yes.
Right? That's part of it. It's like you don't need 10 more people who say, yeah, 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 I'll help you with that thing, who all drop off the face of the earth because it wasn't a good time in their lives for them to be doing that.
Yeah. Yeah. The honesty piece in there. You can practice being honest through your biz
Mm-hmm.
besties.
Yes. Practice being honest, practice being who you are, and let them tell you if you really are too much. I doubt you're too much, but we all think we are.
Yeah, well, we have both carried that. And we're like, oh, we're totally normal. Maybe.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, my friend, I am going to leave us here. We will talk again because we could
Yes, we
talk
will.
forever and have
We
like
could.
a 5-day live stream on YouTube and it still wouldn't be done. And and I'll just leave it with like, it wasn't weird to sit in the car in silence and check text messages. Like that was
It
fantastic.
totally wasn't. There was no first date, blind date vibes at all. It was like I'd
It
known you my whole life.
was so good. Okay, we are going to get together in person again. But first, we're going to get together again on here, and I will see you super soon.
All righty. Have a good
Okay,
day.